Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this session before lunch. I appreciate there is a lot of food waiting for us after this, so do really appreciate you coming in and joining me for this. My name is Venn. I am the Sales Engineering Manager for Northern Europe for Watchguard Technologies. Been with Watchguard now for about 7 years. Prior to that, I was actually an end user. I was infrastructure and security lead for the UK's largest car and yacht dealership group. So lived and breathed technology and security and put in Watchguard products about 15 years ago and loved them so much that I decided to join the company a few years later. So today I'm going to be talking around the cybersecurity predictions. So it's not product related, so you can all sigh a little bit of relief. I see a lot of smiles as a result of that. It's all about the sort of why we do predictions, our predictions, and then if we've got time at the end, we'll do a little bit of a Q&A. So why do we do the cybersecurity predictions? It's all about sort of grounding real trends. It's about understanding or trying to understand where we believe cybersecurity is going to be heading over the next year, the next few years, so we can make products and solutions that are going to be relevant and protect you and your businesses and your customers for those in sort of the MSP world. If we made predictions and didn't do anything about it, it would be pretty much pointless. So we definitely make sure that what we're doing and we're talking about and what the whole industry is doing, we're actually acting on that as well. And we publish this data, so the slides I'm going to show you today is available to you. This presentation I've tried to condense into about 20-25 minutes. We do have a full webinar that's available on YouTube. If you want to watch the whole thing, it's about an hour long and it sort of goes into it a little bit deeper. We do have a cybersecurity portal as well, sort of blog, called secplicity.org, that's secplicity.org, and we publish sort of on a daily basis cybersecurity news, and on a weekly basis we do something called the 443 podcast, where we just take a look at sort of the roundup of cybersecurity and sort of how it can affect you and your businesses. I highly recommend checking it out. There is even an email subscription if you want to get that land into your inbox sort of on a weekly basis. So in the interest of time, I'm going to dive straight in and talk about our predictions. I have 5 in total. The first one is around the malicious use of multimodal AI will create AI attack chains from the very beginning all the way to the end. So what is multimodal AI? We've seen over the years AI sort of adopting quite heavily. And I do have sort of some slides to show in terms of what that looks like as well. But at the moment, we've seen over the last few years sort of single mode AI, which means AI that's there to do a single job. So that could be create some text or generate an image. Well, now we've got models that can do both. They can create the text and they can create the images. They can even go off and create you a PowerPoint deck. Promise I didn't use AI to create my PowerPoint deck. And these are becoming more and more common. We're seeing things like ChatGPT 4.0, we're seeing Gemini, we're seeing Copilot. These are all multimodal. And the trouble is with these are great tools in our hands because they allow us to be more productive on a day-to-day basis. They can generate us content. They can even tell us, hey, if you're going to Istanbul for a week and you want an agenda and you're like me and you're like, where do I begin? Just go to ChatGPT and say, right, I'm in Istanbul for a week. Show me some pictures or sites of where to go, where should I eat? And it will create you a whole agenda. But the trouble is with AI is they can often then get into hands of people that can abuse this. And now, previously, sort of security hacks have often needed a human being to get involved at some stage, whether that's from the early reconnaissance all the way through to the data exfiltration. There's something called the cyber kill chain. It was developed by Lockheed Martin a number of years ago, where it shows multiple steps in which we're able to detect it. At some point in that kill chain, it required a human being to do some work. Well, now what we're seeing is hackers, threat actors, whatever you want to call them, having the tools in their hand to basically not even have to do anything. The AI can detect the vulnerabilities. It can go off and detect what environments it's looking at, and then basically get into that environment, and then often that's when the human being, the hacker, has taken over to then understand that environment, look for the data, etc. Well, now they get AI to do it. And previously, they would have scraped tons and tons of data, terabytes of data from an environment to look for the important stuff. Well, now they can use AI to go, hey, go look for files that contain the word passport or bank information or intelligent property. The stuff that you don't want leaking, they can just use AI. So now the AI will then just stream the data that it actually needs. So rather than pulling terabytes of data, we'll actually pull just the elements that it needs. So this is our prediction, that basically there will be an increased malicious use of multimodal AI. Although it has its benefits, it's also now going to be used through the entire attack kill chain. There's a lot of text on this. I'm not expecting you to read it all now. Just remember what I said, that this is available. So if you want to stream the full webinar, and also there are bite sizes of each prediction on YouTube as well, feel free to check those out. The next prediction is threat actors are going to move to the long con, especially for digital supply chain attacks. So we may have seen in the news over the last few years, more supply chains have been breached. 3CX, the video conferencing software, phone system software, we saw that where the hackers actually got into that and affected a lot of customers. And if you weren't using a zero trust sort of endpoint solution, your endpoint updated, and then you were vulnerable. And you were doing nothing wrong other than using what you perceive to be a third-party trusted supplier, in this case 3CX. Well, hackers are now changing their tactics and going for more sort of open source software as well, developing, trying to influence the development of that. There's a tool called XZ in the UK, or XZ everywhere else for some reason, utils, where in this particular case, the hackers did play the long game. And when I'm talking long game, I'm talking 4 or 5 years to actually get to their ultimate goal, which was to load a malicious payload. XZ tools, or utils, you may not have heard of it, but I can almost guarantee every one of you would have had some interaction with XZ utils. What it does is it decompresses and recompresses files. It's Linux-based, so a lot of web traffic that's running on Linux servers in the back end would have this util, sort of decompressing the data so it's lighter weight to you. So when you're visiting websites, it's much more speedier. A lot of IoT devices also take advantage of this. And what this particular hacker did was about 5 or 6 years ago, he started going into the repositories and uploading bug fixes and suggestions and enhancements. And he's been playing that game for a very long time. So much so that they started to trust him, and they started letting him publish his own bug fixes. And until he eventually took ownership rights of the database, so he could do what he wanted. And it was at that moment he uploaded a malicious payload. It was a game that he's been playing for a number of years with the ultimate goal of knowing that he would be able to upload some malicious code. It was only spotted by an employee of Microsoft by accident, because he's a bit of a geek, and he noticed that an element of a web page took about 50% longer to load than what it normally did. And when I say 50% time to load, you're thinking, well, like 30 seconds, somebody's going to be like, hey, that's taking a long time. I'm talking 0.2 of a second longer to load. So he investigated. He was like, well, why has that happened? I don't understand. What's changed? And that's when he was able to spot the malicious code had been uploaded to this package. If it had gone into the wild and been publicly available for a long time, it could have opened up remote access tools to pretty much any of these web servers. And then, obviously, further attacks could have been taken advantage. And we're seeing thousands of packages, by default, are installed on operating systems every single day. And all it needs is for one of those to happen. So the prediction in this case is basically threat actors are going to use this long-term tactic, trying to get into packages, known installs, to compromise legitimate software. And that will, unfortunately, become the norm. Now, this was a new tactic that was spotted last year, but I don't believe and don't know, if the truth be told, whether anybody else is playing this long game. But I suspect they've seen, okay, this has worked for them, let's now try it as well. So maybe over the next 2 or 3 years, we may see more threat actors trying this long game and slowly working their way into packages and distribution to actually then run threats through that way. AI is my next prediction, is entering sort of disillusionment. Bad actors are leveraging it to profit. So I sort of touched on this with the first prediction too. And I do have some extra pictures in this one. Let's bring it up. So we're currently at something, this is a Gartner hype cycle for technologies. I appreciate at the back, you may not be able to see this as well. But there is something called this hype cycle, where our expectations go up over the time, and then we see sort of drops in trends, and then things will actually pick up. Currently, we're in something called the trough of disillusionment. This is basically where, let me go back, analysts think that we've reached sort of the hype of GenAI, where people were like, oh yeah, this is great, and now they're starting to see issues with it, so it's starting to come down again. Talking about issues, I mentioned that I used it for like Istanbul to plan me a trip. AI is not perfect. We've all seen the models of images where people have got like 6 fingers. I was going to make a comment then, but no, 6 fingers and wonky eyes or whatever it was. Well, I asked AI, ChatGPT one time to plan me an agenda, and it told me to take a leisurely stroll down a river. I looked at that leisurely stroll. It was 567 miles. Didn't fancy it in a lunch break. So AI isn't perfect. It will throw up these hallucinations where things aren't necessarily correct. And unfortunately, we are predicting that AI is going to be used more and more by threat actors. And even though the disillusionment is sort of dropping slightly, they're going to take this to their advantage. And people are like, well, no, AI is going to be easy to be spotted. In reality, AI is getting really, really clever. There's a maths challenge in the US, and I can never remember what it stands for, but the acronym is AIM. They put basically the best maths LLM models to this about 3 years ago. And it scored with an accuracy of 13%, which is terrible. It failed, right? Easy to spot. 3 years, AI is now able to score around 85 to 89% on that test. So it's getting significantly better. But the trouble is, we believe, as consumers, because we see the images on Facebook and Instagram of all the mess-ups of AI, that it's not getting very realistic. So hackers are going to use that to their advantage. They're going to start doing more deep fakes. I was at a conference a few months before Christmas in Latvia, and some guy said, hey, I'm testing a model. Like, okay, brilliant. Where with access to your social media, I can probably ring up one of your relatives, and they won't know it's not you. I'm like, nah. My family's too tech savvy. They won't fall for it. Let's give it a try. This AI model rang my wife. Now, that should have been alarm bell number 1. It did a video call through Facebook Messenger, right? That should have been alarm bell number 2. 1, I hardly ever ring her. 2, I definitely never video call. Okay, I'm a bad husband. And it spoke to her. And it used the things that I'd posted on Instagram, on Facebook, even LinkedIn, of like where I was at the time, and had a conversation with her for a few minutes, until the point where it's like, oh, it named one of my colleagues, needs me, I've got to go, and then cut the call out. I rang her back straight away and went, did you just speak to me? She was like, yeah. Like, you realize that wasn't me. She didn't have a clue. It looked like me, it sounded like me, and she was completely under the impression that she has just had a conversation with me. Scary wasn't the word for it. I've now made sure that she knows I will never video call her and set that expectation. But the truth is, unfortunately, hackers are going to start using this to their advantage as well. Things like Teams meetings, inviting somebody into a Teams meeting. There was an incident in the US last year where an accountant was invited into a Teams meeting with their CEO, and the CEO told them to make a bank transfer. I think it was around $200,000. And obviously, if you're on a Teams meeting with your CEO and he tells you to transfer a load of money, you're going to do what he tells you to do. And that's exactly what happened. They lost the money because it went through a bank transfer and it wasn't detected until afterwards. Hackers are going to start using this more and more to their advantages as well. Okay, there, a bit of doom and gloom. Any CISOs in the room? Any CSIOs? No? One? Okay, one person was brave enough to put their hand up. The role of the CISO will become the least desirable job in the business because of pretty much everything I've been talking about so far, right? It's a harder job to keep on top of all of these new threats. But the truth is we don't really have the skills worldwide that we need to cover us for the cybersecurity incidents and the landscape, the ever-evolving landscape that we're seeing. So they're often feeling burnt out, overwhelmed, not sure what's happening. And we've even seen like legal action taken against CISOs. Okay, it was probably his own fault, but the Uber breach, where they denied it ever happening, that's not a good thing to do. That's why he's now being taken legal action against him. So the threat landscape is growing, basically. But what's shrinking is often the budget for cybersecurity and anything. In today's world, people are bringing their purse strings closer into them. So we're seeing that role is definitely not as desired as much as it should be. Here's an image showing the increase of workforce. So around 5.5 million people are employed in cybersecurity globally, which looks great, sounds great. It's up 9% year on year. But the reality is the shortfall is around 4 million people. So we need almost double. So we've currently got 5.5 million. We need about 4 million people extra. And that's actually an increase of 12.5% year on year. So the gap is even bigger, like is growing, which in today's world gives us this dilemma of going, nobody wants that role as CISO anymore. And it's really important, I said I wasn't going to talk products, so I'm not going to, but it's really important to think about managed solutions. If you're an MSP offering things like managed security to your customers, if you're a customer not thinking that you have to do all of the security yourselves. In today's world, it's really hard to do that because there are so many different attack surfaces, so many different ways of getting into our environments. If you think to where we were 10 years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, security was relatively easy, right? You had everything on-prem, you had your users working in an office, there wasn't cloud services, there wasn't people connecting from anywhere on any device, whereas today's world is very, very different. Not many businesses I speak to these days are purely on-prem still. Most people offer hybrid working or complete remote working. They have moved all their stuff out to the cloud. They might have still a little bit of on-prem, but a lot of it is now cloud access. They're allowing people to connect on pretty much every device that they want to connect on. So this whole threat landscape is significantly increasing, and it puts this struggle on the CISO, which I did use AI to actually generate this image. Because I was trying to find a picture of a struggling CISO, and apparently nobody has that role anymore. So this is one of the industry things. It's not so much about hackers, this is more about the industry. We predict that trying to fill a CISO role is going to become a lot harder, but people should realize that they should be looking to outsource and get professionals that are trained to know what to look for and how to spot problems and also how to fix them as well. And then my final prediction is a slightly positive, upbeat one. I had to finish on a high, right? So good guys' disruption of threat actors starts to have a meaningful impact. And I genuinely mean that. We've seen over the years sort of attacks being stopped or people being outed, and they just move on. But actually, we're seeing more sort of technical operations from FBI and partners are getting more frequent, and they're having significant disruption in the cybersecurity world. And this is nothing but positive. Now, a lot of this has actually come from more businesses reporting incidents. It's really important to report it. And obviously, we've seen this sort of requirement with things like GDPR, where it became a requirement to notify if you're in Europe or you deal with Europe. You're now probably dealing with NIST 2. There's a requirement in terms of like notifying incidents. Well, previously, if you rang up the police and you're like, I don't know who to tell, but I've been hacked, and they did nothing about it, right? Now they have a process that they have to follow. And obviously, that means that we can then, or the agencies can then follow up on that and actually lead to proper investigations. And these can lead to then some major takedowns, things like Lockbait, Black Cat, Hive, and Crackbot as well. Black Cat, they tried to respin up in a few different disguises, and you had a few evangelists that were trying to do their own thing, but in reality, it's not come back. Same with Lockbit as well. And it's all about sort of trying to drive up the cost and the risk for threat actors. The more we can do this reporting and sort of alerting and sort of notifying the authorities of what's going on, it means that we can actually take responsible actions and prevent that. And we see that with the sort of Lockbit in this particular case. It wasn't just one organization. This was a global collaboration of multiple services coming together to lock this down. Now, I can't count, because I've actually got 6 predictions and not 5. I thought I cut it down to 5. So my last one is also a good thing, right? I've spoken quite a lot about the negativity of AI, but it has some really great abilities as well. So organizations, prediction number 6, organizations will rely on AI anomaly detection for the important infrastructure in their organization. AI is actually really good at detecting things that are not right. With that knowledge, we can basically use AI to model what our environments look like. Every network in here, every customer will have a different network. There are no 2 customers that will ever have the same network, because everything is unique to you. So what we can do with AI is actually baseline what normal looks like for you, what is good for you. One of the biggest challenges in the industry is things like IoT devices. They're often locked down, you can't change them easily, you can't load an agent onto them, but they are a security risk in your environment because you can't do anything with them. And what we can do at the network level with AI is to scan your network, and if you've got, I'm going to pick on UFI because they have a robot that goes off and cleans your home, right? But it could be anything. It could be a camera, it could be a bit monitoring and manufacturing production line, whatever it is, any kind of IoT. But imagine that UFI device. All it does all day long is report back to the cloud, UFI cloud, and says, hey, I'm here. Have you got any actions for me? Or I've just done a clean, whatever it might be. The AI will monitor that and go, okay, that's fine. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But then, if that device suddenly starts calling a state, I'm going to pick on them, say Russia, and the traffic's going to Russia, and it's maybe increased data, or it's doing local port scans, or whatever it might be, the AI will go, hey, on a minute, danger Will Robinson, this doesn't look right. You're doing something you shouldn't be doing. So therefore, I can actually take actions and stop that. Things like IoT, it's a little bit harder because we've not got an agent on there, but at least we can alert you and say, hey, look, something dangerous is going on in your network, and now is the time to respond to this. And it's not just networks, this could be SaaS applications too, it could be things like Office 365 logins. I had a notification through from our IT security team the other day. Microsoft threw a wobbly on me, and for some reason decided it needed me to re-add a new MFA token, even though I don't actually use Microsoft's MFA, I use Watchguard's MFA, because it's better. And the IT security team were notified by the AI bot that I had registered a new MFA token with Microsoft. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, why have you done that? That's abnormal behavior. If I'm logging in the UK now, and say in half an hour's time I suddenly started logging in China, Russia, career, wherever it might be, is going to go, this is abnormal. You can't get from here to there in such a short space of time. So therefore, I'm going to prevent the login, and I'm also going to generate alerts. So AI can actually be really helpful in cybersecurity. It's been used for a long time, but it's just constantly ramping up. Watchguard have in the firewalls, physical firewalls and virtual firewalls, we have something called the intelligent AV, which basically uses AI to detect the probability of malware. It's not there to say, hey, this is definitely malware. It's there to say, based on models I've been trained, this looks like it's malware, and therefore can stop it. And actually, we've been using that for 7 years this year, and it detects so much threats for us. So AI is becoming more and more relevant in the cyber industry as well to help prevent those attacks. And that's what I think. My prediction 6 was basically that operational technology in businesses will be more secure with the use of AI. Any questions? I have 4 minutes left. Like I said, that was an hour webinar, and I got it down to 25 minutes. No hands, nobody's feeling brave. Okay, we are at the back of the room, so if you do want to come over and chat about my presentation, critique me, feel free to. Enjoy lunch, and thank you all for attending.